All right, welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're taking on a concept that is absolutely fundamental if you want to master objects in JavaScript. But let's be real, it definitely has a reputation for being notoriously abstract. We are, of course, talking about the this keyword. Now, if you've been working with JavaScript for a bit, you've definitely seen it, probably tried using it, and, if we're being honest, you've almost certainly been completely baffled by it at some point. But don't worry, by the time we wrap up today, you're going to have a rock-solid, structured understanding of exactly how this little keyword works.
It's the golden question, right? What exactly does this mean? It really does feel like this complex, almost philosophical idea when you first run into it. You know the feeling? You're writing code, everything makes perfect sense, and then bam, you drop a this into the mix, and suddenly your script goes completely rogue. It's totally normal to feel a bit lost here. But I promise there's a very clear, logical solution to the whole mystery, and it all boils down to one incredibly simple mental model.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, demystifying the this keyword. Then, the global execution context. After that, object context and ownership, efficiency and scalability, a practical application, and finally, next steps, constructor functions. Let's get into it.
Section 1. Demystifying the this keyword, the mental model.
If you take away just one single thing from today, let it be this definition right here. The this keyword refers to whatever object currently owns the space where the keyword is used. Ownership. That's it. That is the secret. I really want to train you to constantly ask yourself one simple question whenever you're looking at a block of JavaScript code. Who owns this space? Because if you can identify the owner of the current context, you instantly know what the this keyword is pointing to. It really is just that straightforward.
Number 2, the global execution context, finding the root.
Picture this. You've got a completely blank JavaScript document. You aren't inside any kind of object. You're not tucked inside some custom function. You are just hanging out at the very root of your script, the absolute top level. And you write out a super simple command, console.log this. Essentially, you're asking JavaScript to log whatever this happens to be straight to the console. Well, going back to our mental model, we have to ask, who exactly owns this space?
And the result here is actually really interesting. When you run that code, it yields the global window object. Why? Because you're operating totally outside of any specific custom object that you might have built. So, by default, the global window itself is the owner of that execution space. If you log this literally anywhere on that top level, or even inside a basic anonymous function up there, it's still going to refer right back to the window object. The window is the ultimate owner of that root level environment.
Moving right along to Section 3, Object Context and Ownership, Shifting Spaces.
Let's move to and see how this builds when things get a bit more complex. Compare that global scope we just talked about, where logging this gives you the window object, to a custom object. Let's say we create an object and call it mycar2. We give it some properties and a little method called test. Now inside that test method, we log the this keyword. When we actually call that method by typing mycar2.test, the console doesn't give us the window anymore. It logs out the mycar2 object itself. It shows all the properties and methods belonging to mycar2. So why did that happen? Because in this specific context, the method lives inside the object. MyCar literally owns that space. Therefore, this refers to mycar. The ownership shifted, so the meaning of this shifted right along with it.
Section 4, efficiency and scalability, the why behind this.
Now, here's the obvious question, and honestly, the smartest question beginners tend to ask at this stage. I mean, if we already know the object is named mycar2, why on earth can't we just write mycar2.driver instead of this.driver? You're probably thinking, I know the name, why introduce some abstract keyword to the mix? And you know what? You absolutely could hardcode the object's name. It would technically work. But as developers, we generally despise doing things manually. And, as we're about to see, hardcoding names creates a massive trap as your codebase grows.
Because doing that leads straight to an absolute maintenance nightmare. Let's say you have your mycar2 object working perfectly with those hard-coded names, and suddenly you realize you need a new object, mycar3. Okay, so you copy and paste the code. But if you hard-coded mycar2 inside those methods, you now have to comb through every single line of your brand new mycar3 object and manually swap every reference from 2 to 3. And it might not just be one spot, it could be 10. Now imagine what happens when you need to create mycar4 or mycar50. It becomes a huge, cascading loss of time. But by using the this keyword instead, your code becomes incredibly dynamic. You can copy methods across objects, and they just automatically adapt to their new owner without a single manual update. It is literally the ultimate time saver.
Section 5. A practical application. Dynamic identification.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this works in practice. Let's walk through a real-world coding scenario. Instead of just some generic test method, let's create something a bit more useful, like a log driver method. Inside this function, we want to log the name of the driver to the console. So we write a log that pieces together a string. Driver name is +bis.driver. Let's break down exactly what JavaScript is doing behind the scenes here. First, when the method is called, JavaScript dynamically figures out who the owner is at that exact moment. Second, it peeks inside that specific owner space and grabs their unique driver property. Finally, it just stitches the string together and outputs it. It does the exact same job as saying mycar2.driver, but it has the built-in flexibility to work for literally any object that ends up owning it.
This right here is where the power of ownership just completely shines. We've got two entirely different objects, mycar2 and mycar3. They both have their own totally unique driver properties. For mycar2, the driver is the net ninja, and for mycar3, the driver is Shan. Now we are using the exact same log driver method for both of them. When we call mycar2.logDriver, JavaScript sees that mycar2 is the boss, so this .driver yields the net ninja. But when we call mycar3.logDriver, that exact same piece of code dynamically spits out Shan. Why? Simply because the ownership changed. The context shifted, and the keyword just automatically adapted on the fly.
So it all boils down to this fantastic pro tip from our source material. This is determined by how a function is called, not where it is defined. Really let that sink in for a second. It honestly doesn't matter where you originally typed the code on your screen. The only thing that matters is who is invoking it in that specific exact moment. Who is calling it into action? That caller is the owner, and that owner is what defines what this represents. It's such a powerful, memorable way to sum up the whole ownership model.
Finally, Section 6, Next Steps, Constructor Functions.
So where do we go from here? Well, understanding the specific context is the absolute vital first step toward mastering constructor functions. You know how we just talked about copying and pasting objects being a total maintenance nightmare? Well, constructor functions are the advanced tool JavaScript uses to actually automate the creation of objects. They basically act like a blueprint. And guess what? Those blueprints rely 100% on the this keyword to assign properties to whatever brand new object is currently being built. You simply cannot build scalable professional JavaScript applications without constructor functions, and you definitely cannot use constructor functions without fully mastering the this keyword.
Which leaves me with one final question for you to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. The very next time you sit down at your keyboard, open up a script, and stare at a block of JavaScript code, ask yourself, who owns the space? I challenge you to actively trace that ownership before you ever hit run. Because if you can answer that one question, you are never going to be intimidated by the this keyword ever again. Thanks so much for hanging out with me to demystify this. Keep practicing your code, and I will catch you in the next explainer.